Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Ned Bellavance, Ned1313 on Twitter, and welcome to the Daily Check-In. It is Monday, June 22nd, 2020, and it is Professional Development Monday. So we're going to talk about, do you need to develop coding skills? Wait a minute, I'm not a developer. Well, maybe you are, or maybe you could be, or maybe you should be. I don't know. So that's what I'm going to talk about in this episode. Few housekeeping items before we get into it. As I've mentioned before, and I'll mention again, I've updated my live stream so that each day has a dedicated topic. So today's dedicated topic is professional development. That's Mondays. Tuesdays is all about Terraform. Wednesdays is for tech analysis. Thursdays is all about edge computing. And Fridays is all about HashiCorp Vault and getting the certification for Vault. So those are going to be the topics. Pick the days that interest you and watch them, and they'll also be organized in playlists on YouTube. So just want to get that get that nailed down, because I think I've got some good categories now, and eventually one might run out and I'll replace it with something. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. The second thing is HashiConf is happening right now, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Everything is for the Central European time zone in terms of timing. So if you don't mind getting up real early and watching it at 7 a.m. Eastern time, you can do that. Or you can just watch the on-demand version of all the talks. I think my favorite talk so far was today, and it was all about the path to Terraform 1.0. It's an excellent talk. The speaker was absolutely fantastic. I've already started following her on Twitter and following her on GitHub, so I'm excited about that. Ooh, and Vampsy's in the chat, and he said that he enjoyed HashiComp Digital today. So tomorrow I do have a panel that I'm doing with Brian Krausen all about the certification. Not a specific certification, but just like HashiCorp's certification program in general. It's going to be a 15-minute brief conversation, but I think it's going to be very interesting. And if you don't mind getting up early, you can check it out. So those are the housekeeping items in general. Let's check in. So how are you doing? Hi. Was the weekend okay? Did you make it through? My weekend was relaxing. I was at the beach and I had a good Father's Day. The kids were very nice for the most part. And I actually came home early from the shore, so I was away from the kids for the evening, which I like to spend time with kids, but sometimes it's a present to spend time by myself. So I kind of got a little bit of both. That was nice. I hope, if you are a father, you enjoyed Father's Day, or you got to celebrate Father's Day with, your grandfather or your father or someone who, takes that place in your life. Uh, that's all I got right now. So let's dive into the topic. And this was actually submitted by a viewer. They said, I'd be interested in your views on the need to develop coding skills. With the move to cloud and popularity of DevOps and SRE, I feel I may be left behind if I don't develop those skills. Coming from an infrastructure background, I am used to tackling certifications as a way to build knowledge, but this path doesn't exist in the same way with coding, and it's getting difficult getting up to speed with AWS, Google, and Azure. Should I be looking at something like Terraform to try and bridge the gap? So that is the question, and let me address this in a number of different parts. Okay, so the first thing is, with the move to cloud and the popularity of DevOps and SRE, this person is worried that they're going to be left behind if they don't develop coding skills. I think there's a certain element of truth to that, but it's not coding per se. It's having an understanding of software and coding, and also some basic scripting capabilities. And I want to differentiate a little bit between scripting and professional development, because those are two very different things. Yes, your scripting skill set can be leveraged over to actual development work, but when I look at the way that developers approach problems versus scripters, it is different. And that's fine, because they're usually addressing two different use cases. So if you're going to be working in a cloud context, or really any modern platform context, there's going to be a UI and a CLI for that at the very bare minimum, and there's probably going to be an API as well. You should develop scripting capabilities that allow you to use that CLI or that API in a dynamic and programmatic way so that you can automate common tasks for yourself. That's like a bare minimum, and I'd highly recommend that. And if I was getting started in that area and I was looking for a language to learn, I would recommend either learning PowerShell or Python. Now, PowerShell used to be Windows only, And with the newer version of PowerShell, it used to be called PowerShell Core, and I think it might just be called PowerShell now because PowerShell 7 and 6 were basically based on this. It is a cross-platform programming language, a scripting language, let's call it. And it's based off .NET Core. So any system that has a flavor of .NET Core can now run PowerShell. So it means Linux and Windows. So if you come from a Microsoft background, a Windows background, PowerShell, you probably have already dipped your toe in. That's a great place to start. If you're coming from more the Linux side and you want to learn a scripting language, you could just dive in the world of Bash scripting, or you could do something a little bit more real programming language, which is Python. Python's great for scripting. Python can also be used for full-blown programming. So you have a couple options there. It's flexible. Now, I also come from an infrastructure background, and the person said that certifications were a way to build knowledge in this path. I assure you, there are certifications for coding. I don't know them off the top of my head because I've never gone that deep into the realm of coding. What I will tell you is that the newer certification exams coming out of Microsoft that have that DevOps focus and also on AWS will focus on you knowing the CLI and also knowing how to write basic scripts. That's their expectation, that you'll be at least at that level. You don't need to be able to write a full program or something in React.js or something like that, but there is an expectation that you're going to know basic scripting in there, and those certifications deal with that. There are other certifications out there, and you can just look them up. The more important thing, and the way that I tend to learn things, is by having a step-by-step guide that takes you from a beginning project to an end project and being able to apply that to my day-to-day work. That's how I actually learn things. That's how I learned PowerShell. I was an Exchange 2007 admin, and boy, did I need PowerShell, especially when 2010 rolled out and then 2013 and the cloud. So that, put me down the rabbit hole of PowerShell. But hopefully you have something in your day-to-day job that helps you with that. It can be difficult to get up to speed with AWS, Google, and Azure, and I would say pick one cloud and learn that cloud pretty well. Why do I say that? Because once you've learned one really well, then you can apply that to other clouds, because a lot of them are based on the same constructs and the same primitives. They just call the primitives different things, and there's slight differences between them. But once you've figured out how to interact really well with Azure or AWS or even Google, a lot of that knowledge is transferable. It's like if you went through the whole Cisco program to learn networking and then someone puts you in front of a Juniper switch. Yeah, some of the stuff is different, but the core constructs underneath it, like TCP/IP or MAC addresses, they don't change. The routing protocols don't really change between those two different vendors. A lot of the core constructs are still there. Same thing with cloud. What else did they asked if they should try to learn something like Terraform. So, I'm biased. Obviously, I would love for everyone to learn Terraform because I think it's extremely useful, but it doesn't negate the need to have a general understanding of programming. And I say that for a few different reasons. Number one, if you're moving into a role that involves more of a DevOps way of working, where you are closely working with developers, understanding the way that programming and software development happens is going to make you better at interacting with those developers and also empathizing with their problems. I would expect developers to have a basic understanding of how infrastructure works, so that they understand when they're developing something, how that's going to impact things in infrastructure. And likewise, if you have a good understanding of programming, you don't have to be writing whole programs or anything, but if you have an understanding of how programming is put together and how it's going to interact with your infrastructure, that allows you to help the developer write better code. You're not writing the code yourself, but you can go, oh, you know what, if you write it this way, with this module or whatever, it's not going to work with our infrastructure because of X, Y, and Z. Maybe you're using DNS improperly. To go back to a classic example, I can't tell you how many times IP addresses were hard-coded into applications, and that's a terrible idea. If an infrastructure person was involved with the code review or just talking to the developer, they could say, hey, maybe use DNS. Just maybe, throwing it out there. And that would have helped so many migration issues down the line when that application needed to be moved to a new platform or a new environment. So just having that empathy between the developers and the operations people, and you understanding enough about programming to help the developers, is going to be huge. So if I was getting started, I would start with two things. One, learn scripting. Two, learn a cloud. And maybe if I'm going to put a third one in there, learn a little bit about software development and the software development life cycle so you can better interact with your developer peers. So those are my thoughts on what to do. And hopefully that answered the question from the viewer. I didn't ask for permission to use their name, so I'm not going to do that. But hopefully that answered their question. If you have suggestions for me, hit me up. I love getting feedback, whether it's through a Twitter DM or a LinkedIn message for new topics or things that you're curious about. So, drop me a note and I will absolutely incorporate it into the schedule of topics that I have. That's it for me. Tomorrow it's Terraform Tuesday, so I'm going to be talking about Terraform and I teased a little bit of it in this one. It's going to be about Terraform 0.13 and the roadmap to 1.0. So that'll be the topic for tomorrow. Until then, stay healthy and stay safe, everybody. Thank you.